recently I've gone down a rabbit hole of vintage computing. I picked up a couple Commodore 64s, which I am in the process of working on, and then I stumbled across this. This is the TRS80 Model 100, the first commercially available laptop. It was called a laptop because, well, you put it on your lap and you use it. Now, this particular device was originally aimed at business executives. However, the crowd that picked this up the most were roving reporters. I'll get into all the details of that in a later video. This video is going over how I diagnosed, solved, and fixed issues with the display and other things on this device. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Now, I bought this off of eBay about a month ago, and it was listed as parts because it doesn't power on. Now, I have an AC adapter for this, and I can see that it does indeed power on, as you can see here, but you have no display. And I've checked the display here up and down. I've checked to make sure that the memory switch is on, because if this is off, this computer won't power on at all. And I've checked, no batteries, battery connections look clean. Now, the TRS80 Model 100 is notorious for having bad capacitors. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take this apart, and using a capacitor kit that I purchased from arcadeshopper.com, I will leave a link in the description, we're going to replace all the capacitors and the onboard battery for this computer, and hopefully when I'm finished, it's going to power on. So our first step in all of this, of course, is to take out our screws, and there are only 4 screws in the corner holding this whole thing together. Take those out. I did have to get up and get something to ground myself with. And I do, on a separate screen here, have the cap list set up so that I'll know what goes where, because there are some non-polarized capacitors that need to be replaced. Save our screws here so that we know where they are. And I've decided to switch back to trying to do most things on my desk, as it gives me a better platform to work with, and it gives me better camera angles. I am going to work on getting better camera setup for my testing station. And I'm just removing, you've got your battery panel, and you've got your ROM and expanded memory panel. Now, in a future video, I will have some stuff to populate here, so stay tuned for that. This computer was not in bad physical shape. However, like it said in the description, it does not power on. We're just going to lift this up. And there's the inside of the TRS80 Model 100. Now, this is our onboard battery, and as you can see here, it's already basically coming out by itself. So I do notice there is some what looks like corrosion. I'll be taking the whole board out, and we're going to clean it all up. I'm going to take a look at the LCD panel, because you can see something bubbling up here, and I'm not 100% sure what it is. So the first step is I'm going to try to get the thing working, and then I'm going to try to make the screen a little more aesthetically pleasing, if everything works. So we need to take our cable off here, which connects our LCD screen to the motherboard. And this is, oh, sorry, it's LED, not LCD. I'm not sure what this is, actually. I think this might be the buzzer. And then both of these cables go to making this clicky keyboard work. Gonna move some things out of the way. Lay that down. And this is just something I picked up from eBay, unlike the lot of Commodores that you've seen me working on, or will see me working on, depending on what order you watch my videos in. And a big shout out to Louie for giving me a plethora of items to work on. So, top case is out of the way. We'll put that down there for right now. And now I've got to take out these screws here. Make sure that we disconnect our cables and know where they go. That's very important. But yeah, so I'm getting into working on some of these older vintage computers. They always fascinated me as a kid. I was around when this was a new product. I wasn't very old, but I was definitely around when it was new. And computers have always fascinated me. So much so that I am an IT professional today. In today's day and age, I work mostly in virtual machines and not so much in hardware anymore. But in a past life, I did rebuild all sorts of older laptops for use at my previous job. All right, I believe that is all of our cables. Sorry, I believe that's all of our screws, not our cables. Got a cover for the. This is not a serial port right here. This is a port that you would use for a barcode scanner. Very interesting. So let's see. Now, if I've removed everything properly, I think I'm missing a big screw in the middle. Okay, there we are. So this particular screw here, you'll notice has a kind of a rubbery mount, and that goes in the middle, and that keeps the keyboard from being pressed too hard down onto these ICs. So we'll get this board out. I think I may need to flip it around here and kind of coax these two battery connectors out of the way. They should just push down. Oh, there we go. Here we go. Some little rubber rings that go underneath the motherboard to hold it up from the metal shielding here. I'm going to also pull the shield off. Okay, shield doesn't look too bad. Need to brush this out with a brush or something, but that doesn't look terrible. Now we'll set this out of the way and look at this board. I don't really remember what all of these do, but I do know that this is this is RAM, and you have 3 more slots for optional RAM. Now in a future video, I will be installing optional RAM in this, and I've got another little surprise that I found that I want to try to install. But my first step here is going to be checking out the board, and other than replacing all these capacitors, which some of these look quite new, so I may not even have to do that. I'm going to look at cleaning everything up, because there is... So if we zoom in here a little bit, you should be able to see some stuff right here. And I just want to make sure that that's not corrosion and that it's just like remnants of things. So I'm going to check that out. And then looking at the bottom here, we've got some ickies going on with our things here. And this could just be just solder paste or solder flux from 40 years ago, but who knows. I'm going to go through and clean up the board, and I'll be right back. This thing is sticky. All right. So now I've got my crazy weird desoldering gun. And we've got our onboard battery. And that's all there is to that. This is a very interesting soldering gun. I want one of the good ones that is a constant vacuum and not this jackhammer type thing, but when you're paying for all the stuff yourself, and this is what you can afford, because this is a hobby. And that being said, I considered starting a Patreon. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but maybe let me know in the comments down below if you would support me and what kind of cool features you'd like to have in a Patreon subscription. Just going to use my soldering iron now. Always check your tools before you start. Use my soldering iron. Clean up some of this on the back. And there is our very old and very corroded battery. Now, let's take a look at our capacitor kit. There's our replacement battery. Not the same size, just new. Put that off to the side. Now, I bought a capacitor kit, and I also bought a timing crystal, but I'm not sure I'm going to need that, so we'll see. But this is the entire kit right here. Now, as I said before, there are approximately 4 of these capacitors that are non-polarized. And what that means is, with this one, you see you've got this side here, and then this side here. This side indicates negative, and there will be an indicator on the board for that to indicate which side is positive, and you just basically replace them that way. Clean some of this gunk off from underneath the battery there. There we go. All right, so first things first is we need to find our capacitors, and we need to find, this is C, we're going to start, I guess, because that's the one I found, C103, and that is a 10 volt, 220 microfarad. And then this little fella is right here. I'm kind of eyeballing where he is on the board. So first things first is I'm going to take my soldering iron, and we'll just give this a little bit more fresh solder. And you do that so that your soldering or desoldering gun has something to grip onto. I'm trying to show you here. Just like that. And just like that, and hopefully, if we did that right, there's our capacitor. And there's 10 volts, 220 microfarads. Now you see, there's our negative, and there's our positive. So I need to find the replacement, because you cannot just go by size. And this is 16 volts and 70 microfarads. So
2 hours later.
we're going to take this one, which is 16 volts and 220 microfarads. We're going to find where we pulled this out, which is C103 here. And C103, you can see that on one side we have an arrow pointing to negative. So this 16 volt, 220 microfarad will go this way. Squish him down as best we can. Tag that like that. And then we'll get him soldered in. Got a little flux pin here. And with just the tiniest amount of solder, we can take our pins, snip them the rest of the way off, and there you go. There's one down, and a whole handful to go. All right. So going back, our next one is going to be, I'll try to do this from the bottom up, C92. There's C91. Let's just do this. I did find C49, which is the very top one here. And notice, again, the negative points to the negative. I'm going to flip this guy over. What I'm going to guess is these two pins right here. Yes, that should be it right there. So, again, let's double check though. 1, 2, 3 components in. Right about here. So we're 1, 2, 3 components in. Oh. Bring back out. There we go. 1, 2, 3. A little bit more solder. Then here we go. So on that one, somebody had previously bent the pins down. So I'm going to try to gently lift them back up. You might need a soldering iron for that. It does feel like I've got the right part. Sometimes the solder sucker is not going to work, so you have to resort to using your soldering iron to loosen things up. Again, I'm just going to try to be as gentle as possible here so I don't scratch any of the silk screen on the board. Maybe I should try resoldering and seeing if... There we go. Now, one more time. All right, so we've got C75, C76, and C77. That should be pretty easy, and they are all 16 volt, 47 microfarad, which, as you can see, these are much smaller. But I know where they all are. And they're pretty easy because they're somewhat big. At least the connections are somewhat big on the back of the board, so bubble up our solder here. Give us something to work with the soldering gun, or desoldering gun. I do have ventilation off screen, so don't worry, I'm not inhaling all of this. Make sure we don't have any wild solder balls on there. And then again, just gently easing out the soldering. The desoldering gun did a much better job this time than before. I almost wonder if somebody didn't start a capacitor job on this before. These look fairly new. Just cleaning up on the board. There we go. Now, double check because I did lay them down. 16 47, 16 at 47, and 16 at 47, all non-polarized. So we will work each one of these in. I'm going to start with the middle one because we've got that one leg that didn't get quite clean. There we go. Just make sure they're pushed down. One of the things about this TRS100 Model 80 is there's not a lot of clearance between the board and the keyboard, so you want to make sure that when you're soldering things back into place that you be mindful of that and be respectful of the space, or else you're going to end up with a capacitor that's too tall. Keep the new ones separated from the old ones here so that I know what I have replaced and what I haven't. So we've got all the easy ones out of the way. Now, let's look for C78, which is 50 volts, 3.3 microfarads. So just so that you can see what I'm seeing, here's our capacitor list. Now, the capacitance of these devices, they're not the same as what was on the board. Some of them are higher in voltages, some of them are higher capacitance here. I'm not 100% sure which ones go where, other than the non-polarized ones. So that's what all this is all about. That's why I'm confused. So we don't have one that's 35 volts at 33 microfarads, but we have one that's 10 volts at 33 microfarads. So maybe that goes in a 10 volt spot. It's a heck of a jump. So here is a 3.3 microfarad, and this is 63 volts. So I guess that goes at the, there's no other 3.3. So let's find C77. No, not C77. We've already done C77. We need C78. No wonder I couldn't find it. So after probably a solid 2 weeks of trying to diagnose issues, looking at different traces and connections on the board, replacing all of the capacitors and the onboard battery, I found out a couple things. At some point, I, or the previous owner, put the ROM chip in backwards. So this sharp ROM chip in here was flipped around. That makes everything not go. But I did find a forum post, which I'll link in the video description, where someone said that they ran into the same issue with the LCD not working, and their solution ended up being simply a bodge wire connected to, this is T23 if you flip the board over, and I've got it run to pin 4 of the LCD display headers. So after all of that diagnosis and fretting and even purchasing another unit to try to figure out what was wrong, at the end of the day, it was one faulty connection that happened simply because a battery and a capacitor leaked. Now, a lot of the stuff that I did for this, I did off camera, but I went through and cleaned up all of this. I took the screen out and cleaned and replaced the zebra stripes, which I may do on another video because, like I said, I've got a second unit now. But yeah, there was a lot of confusion. I even joined my local makerspace, so I signed up for that. I was shown how to use an oscilloscope a little better than I had been before, and we still couldn't figure it out there. And everything seemed to be pointing to an LCD. As a matter of fact, I thought it was this crystal here. I'd read on another blog post somewhere that somebody had an issue, and the issue ended up being the crystal was not putting out the right frequency, but this one is fine. We tested it on the oscilloscope at Makerspace, and everything was fine. This was an adventure in, not futility, because I ended up resolving the issue, but it was a good life lesson on finding and diagnosing issues on computers that are as old as I am. And I will be making future videos about these units because, like I said, I've got 2 of them now, and I've been playing around with Wi-Fi modem. Let's see if I can actually get that to work. So I'm going to power this on for you after I put some batteries in. Right. Wrong way. It also helps to put the batteries in the correct way. I've actually been playing with this one all day long. Little reset there. Now you'll see if I darken the contrast, there are some line issues still, but with this particular unit, it doesn't matter. I can change the contrast enough to be able to see what I'm doing. One day I hope to come in here and fix these issues. However, I'm more concerned with the overall function of the device right now, and so far, got my caps lock on and my number lock's on. It's working, as you can see. So, maybe a later video I'll diagnose the screen issue some more. If you want to see a very detailed video of a screen issue fix, I'll link Haybert in the description below. He was very influential on me getting this unit fixed, and so big shout out to him. But there you go. I have taken a TRS80 Model 100 from completely dead to completely functional. If you've enjoyed this video, please give me a like. Please give me a comment down below. Let me know what you liked about it. If you have old equipment like this that is just taking up space in your house, you want to get rid of it, or you just want me to look at it, let me know in the comments down below. Shoot me an email, and we can talk about it. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.